Steve, thanks for giving me a couple minutes today.
You bet.
I want to introduce you to my favorite product. It's a product that I sell more of than anything else, and it's called Does It All. Now, on the can, it says that we do 5 things. We do a lot more than 5. First thing it does is that it loosens rusty nuts and bolts. I know, big deal. Number 3 says that we are a lubricant and a penetrant. And number 5 says that we prevent rust and corrosion. So right off the bat, you might be thinking to yourself 2 things. Number 1, this guy doesn't know how to count. What happened to 2 and 4? We'll get to that. And number 2, you might be thinking to yourself, all right, come on, Bart, don't waste my time. I can go to the store and get WD-40. I'm going to show you in the next 5 or 6 minutes how we are WD-40 on steroids. Now, number 4 says that we improve electrical properties and electrical connections. We're going to talk about that. And number 2 says that we displace and seal out moisture. Probably the most important one that we're going to talk about today. 2 and 4 being the 2 most. With that being said, I know it's early. You haven't had a chance to study. It's a 1-question pop quiz. Sorry, Steve. Can you tell me what WD stands for?
No, I really can't.
And it's amazing. Everybody knows the product. Nobody knows what WD actually stands for. And it stands for water displacement, and it was made for NASA, not by NASA, on the 40th formula. They say they got the first 39 formulas wrong, and then they got it right on the 40th. Well, the owner of our company, who, by the way, started our company in 1975, we're not a fly-by-night, 37 years in Missouri and Illinois. Actually, real quickly, it's kind of fun. He's our PhD chemist, and one of the things about our company is that not only do we manufacture 70% of everything that we sell, but the other 30% that we manufacture, that we distribute, are all made in the USA. And we're very proud of that.
Very nice.
Owner of our company loves to joke that WD didn't screw it up on 39 formulas. They screwed it up on all 40. Why? Tell me where WD-40 is sitting right now.
Oh, it's floating on the top.
It's floating on the top. How can you be a true water displacement if you can't even penetrate the surface of the water? So we take just a little bit of Does It All, and you'll notice how we immediately get down below the surface of the water. We are 22% heavier than water. So right off the bat, just as a lubricant, just as a penetrant, we're going to do a better job than your WD-40s, than your PB blasters, and most of your commercial-based products. But that's not what we're known for. We are chemically formulated to bond ourselves to metal. When we bond ourselves to metal, Steve, water, moisture, humidity, it doesn't touch the metal. It forms a very microfilm layer on that metal. When water doesn't touch metal, 2 things happen. Well, actually, 2 things can't happen. The first one's pretty obvious. People think about it right off the bat. Rust and corrosion can't occur because the water does not oxidize the metal. But there's a second thing that occurs that people don't think about as much. Electricity will not flow from the metal through the water into me or into you. And that's what I want to show you today. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to prove to you that we have a working extension cord. No big deal at all. Big deal. We've been taught our whole lives, Steve, don't do this. We've been taught our whole lives, Bart, that's not very smart. And if that's not very smart, well then, by golly, this is just downright stupid. I'm going to show you here in the next couple of seconds, I'm completely safe. Now, I am going to try and keep your floor and your table a little bit clean, so I'm just going to grab my towel here. I could let this sit for a minute. I could let it sit for an hour. It's not going to get any more wet. All I do is I take a little bit of Does It All, and you don't need a lot. You're going to notice how very little I actually use, and I bond Does It All to the metal. That's it. You're going to notice that water and product are actually dripping off, because as soon as Does It All touches the metal, it bonds to the metal, and everything else comes off of it. Okay, now my hands are wet. We've been taught our whole lives, go back to 5th grade science, when you have wet hands, don't touch electricity. My hands are wet, and I'm just going to plug right in. Now, one of the most common questions I get asked, and I love it when I get asked, is, all right, Bart, that's kind of neat, but how long does it all stay bonded to metal? In an indoor setting, like where we're standing right now, does it all stays bonded to metal for 6 to 12 months, which means you're only spraying it once, maybe twice a year. I'm not going to respray my light socket. And you'll notice, there we go. And you'll notice no shock. Now, in an outdoor setting, your shop, for example, wind, rain, snow, ice, central Illinois, Missouri humidity, does it all will still stay bonded for 3 to 6 months without having to be resprayed. So I'm not going to respray my light socket. And we know that this should not light. But when we say that we displace moisture, we have bonded ourselves to the metal inside the light bulb, inside the light socket, we bond to the metal, and the water does not touch it. The metal doesn't even know the water is there. Now, I shared with you earlier that I hope to show you something you've never seen before. And I'm hoping I accomplished that. But just in case, I want to take it another step. Let's have a little bit of fun. This is live electricity. This is my hand in the water, not being shocked, not being zapped, not being electrocuted. Want to try?
No, thanks.
Most people say that, and I understand completely. People ask me all the time, who was the idiot who tried it the first time? It's our owner, but we won't say anything about that. You'll notice I'm leaving my hand in here as well to prove that it's not washing away and eroding. We stay bonded to metal. And what's happening right now, even though we have live electricity in this water, is it's not touching the metal. And therefore, I'm safe, the equipment is safe, your employees would be safe, everything is going to be safer. Now, let's talk about real-world applications. I'll tell you what, before we do that, let me show you that this is still live electricity, and it's not a trick extension cord. I fill up my socket completely with water. Come on, get in there. And the extension cord still works. Underwater, above water, it doesn't matter. Okay, let's talk about real-world applications. How do over 200 of my clients use this product? First and foremost, what you've seen today, electrical outlets. Indoor and outdoor, it doesn't matter. Whether wind gets in there, rain gets in there, humidity gets in there, we bond ourselves to that. Light sockets, light bulbs, ballasts. I'm not suggesting that you go out and that you go change every light bulb and spray them. But when you do change a light bulb, spray a little bit of Does It All in there, moisture, humidity doesn't get in there. But we go beyond that as well. Squeaky doors, squeaky chairs, truck beds. I know your office and your warehouse have no squeaky doors at all to them, but you take Does It All out there and it stays bonded for a long time. But we go beyond that as well. One of the favorite applications that I love telling people about are tools. People don't think about their tools. They go out, they get a tool. Hopefully it lasts 10, 15 years. Hopefully it doesn't walk out of the shop before then, but it rusts and it corrodes. You take a little bit of Does It All and you spray Does It All onto a tool, a pliers, a wrench, a channel lock. Could be a vise or a jack. You spray it on there. Not only do we stay bonded to the metal, but because we are 22% heavier than water, we get below that surface rust. So when you spray an old pair of pliers, you're going to see brown and black gunk. Gunk is an official name for it, just dripping right off. That's the dirt, the grease, the grime. All of that is just coming right off. And when that comes off, we then stay bonded to the metal, so future dirt, grease, and grime don't stick. Oh, by the way, future rust and corrosion won't occur as well. So your tools now last longer, and because they're better lubricated, they work better. One of my favorite stories, Davis Houck Mechanical is one of my clients over in Urbana. Guy comes to me, he says, what about my tubing cutters? I said, what about your tubing cutters? He says, I just sprayed WD-40 3 days ago, and they're completely locked up. I said, Mark, go get them. So Mark brings me these two fairly large tubing cutters. Steve, are you familiar with what tubing cutters are?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well, some are, some aren't. All four of his rollers were completely locked up. So I take Does It All, and I sprayed it pretty liberally. I'll be honest, I wanted this guy to be happy. I probably oversprayed it, like most people tend to do, and you don't have to. I sprayed it and just dripping of black and brown rust and grease and grime. We got all rollers working on both sets of tubing cutters. Now this guy is a guy. If some is good, more is better. So the next week they got their 2 dozen, and he took his tubing cutters and he sprayed them again. He didn't have to, Steve, but he's a guy. I would have done the same thing. The guy was let go. He was working at Eichelberry over on campus. 13 weeks later, his job ended. He was let go. He never touched his tubing cutters. So from 3 days with WD-40 to over 13 weeks, and he probably was going to get 26 weeks or even longer without having to retouch tubing cutters. That's just one example of what we can do with tools, and that's a tool that touches dirty water every day that he works. So tools are another application, but we go beyond that. There are 2 other features that people love about our product. Number 1, we are non-flammable. Why is non-flammability important? Because if you spray a nut or a bolt 2-3 weeks later, you have to worry about torching it or torching nearby it. You don't have to worry about flare-up.
All right.
But I've saved one of my favorites for last. During the winter, and I realize that we're not in winter right now, but during the winter, one of the biggest challenges people face are locks. Now, you're going to notice, as I mentioned earlier, we're 22% heavier than water. We have sunk to the bottom, and the longer I stay here, the longer it's going to sink. Because we are not an oil-based product, we don't freeze in the winter. When we don't freeze in the winter, and because we're formulated to bond to metal, locks don't freeze in the winter. So I don't know how many locks you fight with during the course of a normal winter, cold winter, but with this product, you spray it twice a year. Once beginning of summer, once beginning of winter, and you will not have a frozen lock anymore. It's one of the applications that my clients love. Now, there's a couple of other things that I want to read to you and go over. First of all, recommended for use on automotive vehicles, farm equipment, laundry equipment, electrical equipment, motors, windings, generators, transformers, circuit breakers, relays, controls, terminals, fuse and junction boxes. People don't think about, hey, I'll just spray that. I don't have to worry about any moisture getting in there. Ignition systems, starter motors, distributor caps, spark plugs, alternators, multiple connection switches and switch gears. It goes on to talk about electrical panel board, parking meters, home workshops, outboard motors. Will not harm most plastic. Test before using. Safe on steel, copper, aluminum, iron, brass, painted surfaces, bronze and ceramics. And finally, in big bold letters, do not use on electronic equipment. And I want to take a half a second, Steve, and explain that. It says that we're safe on most plastics. 95 to 98% of all plastic we're safe on. However, 2 to 5% of plastic is made cheaply. It's made with styrofoam. We will eat right through that styrofoam. Electronic equipment, their circuit boards are made with cheaper plastic. That's how they keep the cost down, and it has styrofoam in there. If you were to spray Does It All on a circuit board, in a computer, on a monitor, on a TV, you're going to eat right through that circuitry. Don't spray it on electronic equipment. Okay. Otherwise, you'd be calling me up. So that's Does It All. The way we package it up, 4 dozen is a case, 2 dozen is a half case. What's better application for you? 1 case or half a case?
Let's go ahead and start with the case.